Anybody, everybody got to look at them? Anybody have any questions or comments to make about them? So, all right. So they just stand as presented?
As presented, thank you.
Okay. All right. Teacher representative report.
Hello everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Maddie Benoit. I'm the lower school, so first, second, and third grade ELA teacher. And so tonight I'll be sharing the teacher report with the updates from everybody, and then I also brought a couple of graphs just to like give my blurb whenever we get to that. So lower, like I said, I'm the ELA teacher, and I'll be sharing some iReady benchmark and progress monitoring data this evening. I'll quickly go through the other subjects and then we'll come back to the graph. So for math in lower school, we are reviewing LEAP test questions in third grade. The students are doing well with remembering mastered materials from throughout the year. First and second grade will soon be starting probes for next year to help get a glimpse of where we will need to start and what we will need to focus on at the beginning of next year. Third grade and first and second continue to battle it out, trying to fill up their 100 chart for iReady lessons passed with 100%. Last round, both teams tied and were able to access the reinforcement. So they got extra recess time this week. But the competition has been fierce for sure. Math progress monitoring data, 44% of students have grown 2 grade levels or are working on a grade level skill using proficient levels for easy CBM progress monitoring. In lower school social living, we're currently focusing on LEAP preparation by analyzing nonfiction text and pulling relevant evidence to answer comprehension questions. Middle reports, in general, students are gearing up for our walk to Chick-fil-A. Students must maintain a behavior contingency of 4 or less response costs, as well as paying 10,000 points. We will be beginning our LEAP schedule next week. Middle school will remain with Ms. DeLotte and Ms. Brandon all day. Mrs. DeLotte will be teaching science and math. Mrs. Brandon will be teaching ELA and social studies. In ELA, they're working on personal narratives. This week, we were focused on cause and effect. It has been a struggle, but we have made it over the hump. We will begin working on writing and identifying sensory details next week. In math, 4th grade students are working on long division. 5th grade are working on adding fractions, creating common denominators, and determining common multiples. 42% of middle school students have grown 2 grade levels or are working on proficient levels on their easy CBM progress monitoring. In upper, the general memo is that the LEAP Pep Rally is this Friday, March 28th. We are still trying to schedule big ticket items for basketball and the Nichols Day. The basketball game for our few students who bought it will be on April 1st. In ELA, they are working on testing strategies in small groups while continuing to complete Amplify in a whole group setting. All grades will continue vocabulary for Amplify and the workbooks along with it. Upper will go learn at Nichols in the beginning of April when 4th and 5th are LEAP testing. During this time, we will work on learn units for topics already covered but not yet mastered. At the end of the month, we will let students buy for big ticket items again. In math, on the back, 6th grade students are currently working on division with fractions. 7th is currently working on the 4 operations with negative and positive numbers. 8th is currently working on graphing proportional relationships and defining slope. 18% of students have grown 2 grade levels on proficient level progress monitoring via easy CBM. And then the special education update. In lower, 3rd grade students have shown major growth in LEAP testing behaviors. Students who have read aloud as an accommodation for the LEAP have been going through a protocol to ensure that students are utilizing this for testing. We will begin focusing on fluency throughout intervention times for 1st through 3rd to prepare for end of the year benchmarking. In middle and in upper, they have been working on appropriate test-taking behavior when in a small group setting through the use of a group yoke contingency. If the students follow the rules, they get to move up, and if they are not following the rules, then the teacher gets to move up after 1 minute. We have seen an increase in more appropriate test-taking behaviors once this was implemented with middle and upper students.
Nice.
To circle back to my own update, I included 2 graphs. The first one, the front is iReady growth. So I graphed every student, all 25 students, 1st through 3rd grade, and the blue line indicates average growth per month. So every month I do a quick growth monitoring via iReady, and this was the average number of points they grew each month, during the whole duration of this school year. The red line shows benchmark growth from fall to winter. So the number of points they grew from their fall score to their winter score that we tested in January. I also indicated that 30 points of growth is about one grade level, approximately one grade level of growth, while 60 is approximately 2 grade levels of growth. So we did see some inconsistencies between the average growth per month and the benchmark growth. However, the benchmark growth is a longer test. It's conducted over 4 days as opposed to 1. So there are more strenuous testing conditions. So that's a factor to consider. But we did have a number of students who grew 1 grade level, and we had some students who grew 2 grade levels on the growth checks as well as their benchmark growth. So we have students who are growing pretty rapidly, which is great.
Yes, wonderful.
If you turn it over, iReady benchmark data is there. So this is the score they obtained on the iReady test. So again, first, second, and then third. And then I put black lines to indicate what the grade level score would be. So you can see in blue where they were in the fall, and then red where they were in the winter in January. And so we have some students who have obtained grade level, some who have surpassed grade level, and then many who are approaching. 100% of the students grew on their benchmarking for the winter. So everybody grew, but not everybody obtained the grade level target yet. But we're hoping that those who did not will obtain it in the spring testing in May.
This is just for, I'm sorry, Steve.
No, we started at the same time. Go ahead.
This is just for lower school?
Yes, sir, just for all 25 of my students, and this is just their ELA data in my class.
We had a meeting earlier today, and this is the type of data
Yeah.
that we need.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
I was
thank you
gonna
for
say that
this,
too.
the
Absolutely.
drafting of this. It helps me understand a lot
But the
better.
visual is definitely want to analyze the data and analyze the visual. I think it's helpful for everybody to be able to see it on, black and white paper. So,
You have a beautiful voice.
oh,
You
thank
really
you.
do.
Oh,
Very,
thank you.
That's something, there you go.
Okay.
Jason, that's right up your alley, right, for what we're trying to do, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Also, that statement on the report about 18% of students, you saw those, 44% of students have gone to grade level, 42%. That's interesting too, those statements, kind of coincide with what you're doing, progress.
And we
grade
saw some,
level
like, similar
progress.
information presented in last week.
Yeah.
and the week
It
before.
showed up in the minutes and the way I could clearly
Mhm.
see it. Those are very, very valuable, I think, data points.
That's what we look for.
Yeah.
And that's how we're different, that's what we specialize in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any questions I can answer before I step out and let you guys?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Oh,
Maddie,
okay.
that's it.
Thank you, Maddie. No worries. Have a great rest of your evening. I did make
You
more
too.
copies. I don't know if anyone's not here that would want a copy.
I do have one question before you go. if
Yes,
that's okay.
absolutely. What can I help you?
When you break this down by student,
Mm-hmm.
is that, are you all able to use that to say, okay, we have some students that are really, they're hitting these top marks very,
Right.
very well in their winter scoring. But then we have some students who are making some progress, but the rate of progress
It's slower.
is lower.
Absolutely.
Does that have an impact on how you would instruct a child in the classroom?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So this is just data that are made over a month's time or 3 months time, because we benchmark around every 3-ish months and we progress monitor once a month. But that is just an additional measure to the data we analyze daily. So their learn unit data, their learn units to criteria, which would be like the average number of learn units they need to master a skill. All of those things we graph, all of their accuracy, to where whenever it gets to the appropriate number of data paths, I can make a decision. I can use, the literature of the science to kind of help make those decisions. So this is definitely important data, but this is like kind of the long term. We are definitely analyzing daily to help shift instruction at the small group
So
table.
you mentioned you have your clinical trials to criterion.
Yes, trials. So learn units to criteria, we
Yes.
average per week for every student
So
in my classroom.
At the end of this school year, how far back will you have tracked this data? Well, what's the length of time? In other words, if you started in January, will you have all of this
Right.
tracked up until May?
Absolutely, and then the students on here that are in third grade, if they were here for first and second grade, I have this as well for that. So like longitudinal data to be able to see if over 3 years have they grown in my classroom, and then of course we track their learning units criterion. We track the number of learning units that they're presented. We track the type of learning units that are presented in my class. So that way I'm able to shift instruction based on what custom capabilities they have, what grade level versus what developmental level they're functioning at. So there's a lot of different factors that go into what we present at the table. And we make daily decisions, but this is really good, like I said, for the long term of a school year, but even long term over multiple school years. So that way kids who I have first, second, and third grade, I've only been here, this is my third school year here, but I do have 5 third graders that I had as first graders. So now I have their first, second, and third grade data, which I'm really excited to see in May. You know, how much progress have we made across the 3 years that I can have them.
So when this school year is finished and everything is settling down a little bit, can you provide us with all of that data?
Absolutely, yeah, I can provide you with all of this is already graphed, so I can send that to everybody.
So we'll have a data set like we've talked about of kids that have been here first, second, third grade.
Right.
And then we'll be
That's
able to
what I'm
compare that to
thinking.
someone only showed up in the second grade or only showed up in the third grade.
Absolutely, which the data is phenomenally different in terms of
Right.
students who start in third grade versus those who
Well,
have
that
early
is something
intervention
we've wanted to
for.
capture for decades, and that is
For
so
all,
So CABAS is a wonderful thing.
Yes.
It makes all of these things happen, for
that
sure.
is so nice.
we will have that for all grades, up, lower, middle, and upper.
So I only teach first, second, and third
I
grade.
understand
Right,
that,
so the data that I'm presenting, this is what
Okay.
I've collected.
but we should have it for lower,
It's
all
not gonna look,
kids.
it's not gonna look like that in all of the grades because of, they're not collecting on all of the data points like that. There's gonna be data on all of the students, but right now we're still working, there's not a very smooth segue between middle and upper. That's one of the things that Dr. G and I have been talking about today.
And I know
Because what we have to have to bring to the State Department is something that is measurable, that shows that
Growth and
the growth throughout, you know, like a student that started here in the 4th grade that's now in the 8th. You know, how much did they grow from 4th to 8th? Where were they in the 4th grade when they came? Where were they when they left in 8th?
And you get subsets, like if they came here in the second grade.
We don't, yeah, we have that kind of, just know that there's a lot of attrition once you get, so we lose a lot of kids in the 6th and the 7th grade. And once we do that, the ones who stay, there's a reason they're staying for the things that we have to offer here. And so I'm worried about internally skewing the data because of that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Repeat that. But we have to have the date, we have to have hard numbers to be able to demonstrate that what we are doing is good for the students that we're bringing here.
And once they've reached a certain capability, because what we've done is good, they return to their site, their home site.
Well, hopefully the last data we have on them would indicate,
Yeah,
like,
the
this
last
is why
data.
we released them
Okay.
from our services because of this
They
data.
left in 7th grade. Well, how did they came in the 2nd grade. This is how much in those 5 years they've grown. Did they grow 1 year?
Regular
Or,
districts because they're doing so well. I'm sorry, I talked right over the top of you.
well, you always,
I have an impulsive thing, and my frontal cortex has got a really significant
yeah,
problem.
well, it's not your only problem.
So it's the most significant that I like to say. If we are returning people and we can show that by data, that's another thing that we can argue about. Hey, we've done an incredible intervention here. We brought a child in here that was struggling and they stayed with us X number of years. But that's not what I wanted to say.
But that is.
I was so overwhelmed with the logistical load in the school from discussions in our last meeting. It was just amazing to the kinds of things that you're trying to manage just in data collection on the academic side, but then preparation for LEAP and all of the other things. So I know sometimes it may sound like we're asking for the impossible, but what you just described to me, I think is one of the fundamental things that we've been hoping for, as far as being able to track students, and the notion that you could tell me says, yeah, but when we see the blue and red line, there's not much difference, then we need to take a look at that specific child and say, is there something we need to modify in terms of instruction to help meet that child? I mean, that is data-driven curriculum modification, instructional modification, which I think nobody can do that as well as we're beginning to do that now.
And ideally, I think if people get too close into this and look at an individual student, if we tell them we want to be assessed on progress, and that's an individual student, if you really did it right, you'd say if they came here in the 3rd grade with this level, we will be considered competent if that individual at 2nd grade does this. You can do that with, if they got here in the 4th grade, you can expect us to do this. That is what I think we can get down to. That avoids, I think, people going to an individual student and saying, well, they're not going anywhere. Yeah, well, they came here in the 7th grade at this level, and look what we did with that student. If we could ever get down to that point, subsets, that would be great.
I think she's done a good job with that already.
Mhm.
Because you got the benchmark there, this is where they started. You
Yeah.
got the growth data, okay, this is where they are right now.
Mhm.
Right.
But you also can, and this is for each individual student,
Yeah.
but here you're saying that
44%.
overall, they had 18% growth. Overall, they had 44%.
Yeah, that's in math.
Right, my
This-
growth was 100% of students grew, just not everybody met 100% of their target yet.
Mhm.
Right,
Right.
the point is that you can do it for individual students, but you can also do it for all
Right.
students.
Right, for the whole group, yeah, first, second,
Because
or all
if you
first
look at
graders,
that-
second graders, third,
Right.
first to third,
Right.
first to eighth, like you could group them however.
I think it's
Whatever the
important to
person-
hold on to the notion, and again, I'm not as up in the literature in this area as the two of you are, but we're dealing with children with dyslexia.
Oh, yeah.
And so we may run up against a wall where this is gonna be a skill that they're just not gonna master, or it may take years for that skill
Yes.
to develop in that person. But if we have data that says, we identified that kid because we have this, and we look at the growth
Right.
and only so much growth, and we're trying to modify instruction to meet that kid's needs, to me, that is the essence of what the CABAS model is about that you mentioned, and what we're actually doing now. So I really do appreciate this, and I'm gonna try to shut up there.
Knowing how we've sat on committees before, somebody takes this report without the individual stuff, they immediately go to, only 18%. But then we go to this, that's not, we are individual students, and here's where we are, let's look at A students, that's how we're different, that's common. But I know how people look at reports like that and go with overall 18%, that's no good.
Yeah.
And then now, no, this is what we need.
Well, eventually,
We have both.
Eventually, we're not gonna have to convince people, we're gonna have to convince the Louisiana Department of Education, superintendent.
Yeah.
So, if we have the data,
Yeah.
then we're in a better position than if we don't have the data. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
All of this is almost saying we have to be judged differently than anybody else in doing this. When I look at what you're asking for, we're almost asking for a separate rubric for just us because of what we do. And what we do based on this is different.
At least in that one, that extra category.
But this individual like this
Individual.
shows that not every student went as far as we had hoped, but look at how many did and how
Yeah,
they did it.
yeah.
Well, look at the
And then
improvement.
what
This
do we,
is
what
what
do we
we
do to the
gonna-
ones
yeah,
that
we gonna
didn't?
work
That's
on
that
our
next
framework.
tier, that next level. You mentioned trials, criterion thing. I wrote yesterday in a note. I was going to try to show you at the last meeting. I said we need a good trials to criterion measure,
Right,
and it's
so
there.
the learn units to criteria is super important because
Yes.
we know the literature tells us that the average number of learn units based on the student's developmental level, like their verbal behavior developmental level, what is appropriate for that student. So then we're able to teach them academic tasks, measure the learn units, measure the learn units criterion as they meet objectives. And then once we have that average, we're able to say that they're learning faster than or slower than where they should be as an individual. And then there are interventions that we can do to target how they learn, not just what they're learning, but how they're learning. So all of the first, second, third grade students, I do a verbal behavior developmental inventory on all of them, and we learn how they learn. Can they learn incidentally? Can they learn via observation? Do they have audience control, and so on and so forth. But when you induce these things, you kind of phase change your graph for your learning needs criterion, and what you should see, according to the literature, is you should see that learning needs criterion drop drastically because they should need less instruction to obtain more material.
I appreciate your couching that in literature and research, which is, I think that is what we absolutely need.
Also, Maddie, she is a walking, talking example of what CABAS is
Yes.
and how we're different. How did you get the training?
So
What was your
I
training?
did 4 years in an ABA clinical facility, but I serviced kids in the clinic, I serviced kids in schools, and then I did home and community-based services. And then once I finished my master's in ABA at Nichols with Dr. Gotro, I let him know that I was interested in advancing my training into a school sector, so not just teaching like adaptive skills or decreasing behavioral challenges, but like looking at the same processes, collecting and analyzing and making decisions, collecting and analyzing data and making instructional-based decisions, but then pivoting to academics. So being able to study the science of behavior, but looking at it in an academic framework as opposed to just a challenging behavior or adaptive skills framework.
So it sounds like you've had a lot of experience with low incidence identified individuals.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So.
Close to my heart.
And you have a lab here with 200 students where you can, at the beginning, get down to the individual.
When
with
did we
the
double
data.
in size?
Yeah.
The what?
When did we double in size?
Oh,
What?
excuse me.
He's our dreamer.
I
Well,
need two
the bottom
buildings for
is-
that.
So
Yeah.
yeah, this,
Will not
what,
fit
so
fine.
this, I think this will help us with when we can see, you know, we were talking about our framework a little while ago, and we kind of just got stuck again. We don't know the numbers to put into the framework. This is going to help us to figure out
Absolutely.
which numbers to put in the
Yeah.
framework.
Well, that very part of the discussion, you mentioned we got to convince the people in Baton Rouge. This part of this discussion, capturing this and being able to speak as specifically as what we're doing, I think would make us stand out and be very, very unique as a school.
They have to see
They,
that we are unique, and
Yes.
they have to understand that. And this is where this is starting to fall into place for me, especially.
for me too, it's
Yeah.
So,
This is
Maddie,
really
it sounds
unique.
like you've just been appointed to come and speak with us.
Well, I can definitely, I know I'll be leaving
You must
shortly.
have read
but
my
if
mind. I was
any,
just getting ready to say
Any
that.
specific data that we discussed this evening, if anybody wants a copy of it, Ms. Roderick can just jot down what you guys would want to see, and I can either email it or print it for the next teacher rep to share at the next meeting.
Well, whether you know it or not, you may have done something that is going to be very valuable to the
Yes.
future of the school.
yes.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks. One more thing, Maddie.
Yes,
I
sir.
know that ELA is your thing. Do you think these data are readily available from the math side of things?
In lower school,
lower
I would
school?
yes, I
In
would
lower
say
school.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Miss K is finishing up her master's program in May. So is our para in lower school, and
Okay.
then Miss B, our special educator in lower school, also graduated from the same program as me. So we all collect data pretty similarly, just because we have similar training. So I think if we asked Miss K for exactly what you guys are looking for, she'd be able to provide that
Possibly
in math
model
as well.
hers over, after yours. Okay.
Right.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much.
Y'all have a wonderful evening.
All right, well, that was awesome. All right, so next up is
May I
Angie.
say one
Oh, yeah.
more thing? And when we hire people now, new people, they should know that's what we want. Ideally, if the pool can give us that. If we had people like that with CABAS who are trained in it, then things would. And I know we already do, Ms. Rodriguez. I know we're looking for
We
that.
look for them, it's just that they're not always readily available when the positions
Yeah.
are open. And the reality is that this was a choice for some of these people who could easily triple their pay by not being here.
That was in the back of my mind that you know, we
So
train
that's
them.
also a reality when I'm
Yes.
trying to recruit to come in with those credentials already in place. It was easy when you pick them up prior to them finishing those credentials. They come here because they can, they stay here because they love it. Yay. But at some point when families start popping up, there are going to be choices that have to be made, and that's the reality. Triple is the minimum of what they would be making outside with their BCBA.
I guess that's the beauty of being attached to Nichols and being more closely attached to this college program that's over there. That
Correct.
at least we're capturing some really good talent that's in the pipeline, and we're going to lose some, but still,
Well, the monetary thing has been a problem for all of us, and you know, if you have the money, you can do it. But if we don't have those people, and we can't work with getting those people, we're going to see less dramatic outcomes. So, as long as they know that we have expectations
Yes, sir.
when you hire them,
Yes, sir.
we have expectations of you, and if you leave, it's your own.
No, I'm just to add, like, I think that's the thing, like, they do have extra that we put on them, and
Yes.
we also have to make sure that we thank, you know, we do thank them. They do go above and beyond, and just not all, they don't all have that particular background, and we have to teach them how to, you know what I'm saying?
If you have a
yes,
pool,
different.
that
It's
was
a little bit different.
that was really evident, and
Yeah.
You can even tell by their reports.
They're all
each month.
capable, but it's different when you didn't
Well,
learn
they
it
can learn.
in your
they're
education.
different
Yeah.
in terms of their own professional development. They're in very different phases.
And if you
Development
get
experience.
people at the beginning of their careers who are trained through there, they can be trained like that, and if they go for 3 times more salary, this is was fundamental for them, for their career. So they come here and they leave. If you don't have a big enough pool, you get stuck.
Yeah.
But beginning teachers who are trained and leave us, this becomes a foundation for their
Yeah.
career.
And they end up helping kids in other schools.
Yeah,
you know,
and
that's-
Nichols is close, and I
Yeah.
think the young, right out of that who want experience, and then if they move on, as long as we have a pool to replace, you're fine.
All right.
Okay.
So Angie, next
Oh, yeah.
financial report.
Okay. Hey guys, thanks for coming. So if you guys had a chance to go over the financial report that I sent, it's seems to be similar to how we've been rolling along for the last few months. As usual, wages and benefits are 80% of the money we spend. I wish we could spend more, but we just don't have it always. This month, the month of February and a little bit into March, same story, reimbursement requests and lunch claims that keep us going steady. I'm able to keep up with those pretty timely. Also, on March 11th, I don't know if this is in her principal's report, so sorry if I'm stepping on toes, but Mr. Cam Morvant delivered our L'Oreal grant check for $25,000, so we were excited to get that. And I don't know if y'all remember, but I talked about some technology upgrades for students, but also for the business department and things of that nature. And yeah, I got my new computer today. But last week or so, the Louisiana Legislative Auditor puts on a best practices workshop every year, and I was virtual, so I was able to do it from here, but chance to get continuing education and stuff like that. And this week I attended until this morning the LASBO conference in New Orleans, and I was able to LASBO in conjunction with SASBO, which is the Southeastern Association of Business Officials. 14 states were represented. It was a very good conference. I got to network and meet a lot of people and learn some new things still. So I just got back from there this morning, came straight here. And
Is there something that you learned from there that you can share with us?
I can...
Just one
Well,
thing
we did a round table on the MFP, the formula updates, and while I know how much money we get every month and I can read the budget letter, it was a little more detailed, and like every now and then I'm like, this is why I came. I got that one extra little piece of information that helped me to understand it a little bit more. I don't always learn a whole lot, but I always learn something, which I think is important to
I don't
keep
think
up with.
anybody understands
I don't know that I don't know that I still understand
Your
it
genius is
completely,
coming
but
through.
I don't think anybody understands.
well, and then they were able to like hear what other states talked about in their formulas and the differences and things like that. So it kind of makes it, I don't want to say make more sense, but make a little more sense whenever I'm trying to figure out things on my end. And on that note, we just got our mid-year adjustment from the February 1 count, and it increased a little. I think we might have gained a couple of SPED students, even though we lost a couple of non-SPED students. So you get a little more money for special education students. And other than that, I have been also continuing to work on the budget. Also, when we talk the competitive funding portion of the super app, I think tomorrow they're going to send us the preliminary numbers of what kind of funding we might get based on our super app that we submitted a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of months ago, I guess. And we talked about teachers and pay, so that's all the things that I've been working on for our budget prep for next year. Just kind of an ongoing thing. I can honestly say though, I didn't do a lot this week because I was at that conference all week long. So today was crazy trying to catch up. But yeah, other than that, I don't have a lot of different things. We still look good as far as if you look at the 3-year comparison. And that's all I got, unless you guys have any questions.
I would just like to say that, we get caught up with the framework and talking about the academics for charter school renewal. But one of the things I look at too is finances. And so thank you, Angie, for making sure that we never have to worry about what our finances look like.
Thank you.
Like,
It's my pleasure.
It means a lot that we don't have to worry about that. So thanks for all you do.
Well, I mean, that's felt like you put a little more responsibility in it. No, I'm just
No,
teasing.
no,
I'm
no.
kidding.
It's like we've never,
Thank
it's
you.
never been a concern. So thank you.
Thank you. I've met people and I tell them my story, and honestly, it's probably the most rewarding job / career in my entire life. So I appreciate you guys entrusting in me to do it every day. So thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so y'all grants. We got that little blurb about the L'Oreal grant, so thanks for that too. And anybody else have anything? I know we don't have a grant person listed there. Anybody have anything to say or any?
I don't have anything
Nothing?
to add besides the L'Oreal.
Thank you. And then how about building and sites?
Mr. Jake and his tractor came yesterday and day before yesterday to fix the awning. He was driving the tractor and Mr. Manuel survived.
Oh, okay.
And so now we have the rest of our awning, which we are happy to have since it's going to rain tomorrow. And Carline is tough when you only have 2 spots to get into because they're covered. So that was a good thing. And we have a crater in one of the classrooms. We've done it before. The moisture is not abating. We're now going over places that were fixed because the moisture still keeps seeping up through the floorboards. So, this was the last thing that was fixed. Now it's going to be the first one on our list as we go through all of those spots again. That's what Mr. Manuel said it's going to be, that we're going to be going over those spots.
And it's mostly in seams, but also
In the middle of a floor.
yeah.
All right. Bad news. First bad news today.
But I guess you guys did see, no one ever got to get buzzed in, but except for the badge in, our door is fully operational now.
Mhm.
You can buzz in from the inside.
Yeah.
No one can get past there unless we let them. So we're definitely safer
Awesome.
from that standpoint, I think. But
All right. So now how about the principal's report?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so LEAP will be starting next Wednesday. That's the 2nd. The official window is until May 14th, but we should be finished by May 9th. We may have some stragglers and makeups because for the first push of LEAP, we won't really be able to make up people in the midst. So like if someone ends up late, we'll probably have to wait till the end of the cycle to get that missed test. Because we are running morning and afternoon testing, and I'm going to be having 2 grades at the beginning. 7th and 8th grade are going to be testing concurrently. to get them out of the building as quickly as possible so that we can do 4th and 5th, which have a lot of rooms involved with them because of the types of testers, individual testers as well as the small group testers. So it was a Jenga. We made it work. There's still going to be teaching for non-testing groups. So in the afternoon, people who tested are expected to go and learn some things in the afternoon because we have deficits to make up, not just tests to take. So that will continue, and the teachers have made a teaching plan for all parties involved. As was read on the teacher's report, when we come back from Easter, I will be kicking 6th, 7th, and 8th grade out to Nichols, and we will use the two ends of the school, and we'll keep 1st, 2nd, and 3rd kind of nestled in the middle where the bathrooms are, so that they don't have to leave the building, but we can insulate the test-taking rooms sufficiently to let testing go on. Let's see. We do have we have 16 applicants for the 25-26 school year. Tomorrow is the last day of the official window. That's about the count we usually have in the window. We do get a lot of people that come in, especially around the end of April, beginning of May, because that's when reality really sets in. And so I don't expect these to be the only applicants coming in. We had the bulk of our applicants came in around May last
What
year.
grade level?
Yeah,
They are all across the board. I even have someone from 7th grade applying. So they are all over. If they are eligible, not all of these are eligible numbers, I don't foresee a problem of slipping them in. It's the eligibility, making sure that they fit the criteria and not deviating from that, because once they're here, if they don't fit, there's no way of getting rid of it. So opera is on the 1st, the 3rd, and the 4th. PTA meeting will be May 14th. That will be our last PTA meeting. We were very fortunate with Miss Oceanero taking these field trips by grade band, so by class, rather than the whole school field trip, because that's a lot of buses and it's hard to come by transportation. We have relied upon parents, and the last one was a 6th grade trip, and we had a lot of renewed interest of parents to be a part of what goes on in the building. So we did have a few new people at the last PTA meeting that hadn't shown up before, and I'm looking forward to more PTA members coming in to the May one as well, because they expressed interest at this field trip. Oh, tell me when the PTA meeting is. So we're going to make sure we blast that out multiple times so that they're aware of this meeting, because we are hoping to fill in next year's officers. Otherwise, we're going to be in a conundrum with 2 of our people leaving because their student is leaving, and being able to fill in that need. So I am hopeful to that because of those field trips. I do have the 25-26 calendars in your packet, both the academic and the 12-month. There is another one, but I leave that to Ms. Angie to do for those not on those timeline calendars. So
Couple of 10 and a half.
Yeah.
Do you want us to vote on it today?
If it is possible, I would like to be able to get that.
If the board allows an action item at this point, because I didn't put it on the agenda because I didn't have the calendar. Showed up in my spam.
I'm so sorry about that, ma'am.
Do we need a motion to amend the
Yes.
agenda?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so we have motion and a second to amend the agenda.
For
So
the
that
action item.
for the action item to approve or not approve the calendars. So you want to maybe give us a little spiel on how
The calendars don't deviate a whole lot from our
Regular.
from the district in which we are located, except for that we start a full day earlier. I wanted to try to snuggle in a few more days, but other than that, it does not deviate because we do have a lot of people coming in from this district. So I wanted it to match as much because of the sibling issue with siblings in nearby schools being able to have a similar calendar. That Mother Nature allowance. Because, you know,
We're gonna do this in two separate action items, one for the teachers, 12-month employees, and one for the teachers.
Okay,
Well, and your motion would take care of both of those. I think that's what we
Yeah.
did.
Do you want one
So
motion?
first we
or
have
two?
to vote on the deviation.
Well, just to amend the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was
And
all,
that when we
that's all.
voted, okay.
Yeah.
okay.
On that.
So,
I didn't,
We didn't
Does
vote.
anybody-
We didn't
We
vote
need
yet.
We didn't
to
vote yet.
vote to amend the
Oh, I
agenda.
thought,
We
does
didn't
any-
Yeah.
okay, so all in favor of amending the agenda?
I
Okay, sorry about that.
thought we do.
All right.
oppose.
So, do y'all want to, let's look at the academic calendar. We need a motion to approve the academic calendar.
So move.
Second.
Second, all in favor of the academic calendar?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, then how about the 12-month calendar?
So move.
So move? Anybody second?
Second. I'll second.
Okay, all in favor of approving the 12-month calendar?
aye.
Opposed? All right, we have some calendars.
thank you. I'm sending out the official calendar. Okay.
All right.
The only other things I have is Global Wildlife Field Trip is still on. We will have to get buses because that would be a whole school behavior contingencies in place. That would be a whole school field trip to the Global Wildlife Park with giraffes and other things. The update on Cavus, I have been speaking with the docs about a refresh. As some of you remember, there are only 2 teachers that were at the original boot camp and 2 paras from the original boot camp still in the building. And some of these teachers are trained. Miss Maddie, she didn't need the boot camp, so to speak. But then others are not, and they have been doing due diligence and building the airplane while it's flying. And I think it's time for us to regroup as a team with that team for a 3-day period. I did speak to Mr. Jake about that because that doesn't actually fit within the purview of what Miss Angie Magic has been doing. When you crunch the numbers, that wouldn't happen. And Mr. Jake said that we would be okay. I think he's going to talk to you guys as a foundation to make that happen. It wouldn't be 2 weeks. It would only be 3 days. And it would be prior to the calendar we just voted on. So it would be the last 3 days of July where we would focus on a refresh of what went on in that boot camp, or for some people, an extra boot camp, and also to come out with workable pieces that will be put into action the next week. Okay? Especially with regarding to that learning picture that we have, but it's been hard getting that data into the learning picture while teaching. That's been one of the things that we want to focus on, the procedures and streamlining how we get that information in there, because otherwise the learning picture itself is like an extra 2 hours every day with the amount of like data. So like when we ask for certain people's data, this gets spit out by one of the programs, but the learning picture stuff is actually reams of paper, mostly handwritten and on napkins, because that's what they have at hand while they're doing this stuff. But we got to get it into something so that you can access it, or we can turn it over in a usable format. And that's kind of been the issue, the time it takes to get all that rich data into the system that can accommodate it. It's not particularly intuitive, and it's very tedious. It's very tedious with drop down menus and stuff.
That we asked them.
Well, it's just as what is the skill requirements
It's,
So you
well,
have to have for
see,
somebody to do just the data input that you're describing.
we had Noah look at it. He did some of it, but it really does require decision making when you're inputting, because none of the data is clean, because it's on napkins and other things that you find the data on, to get it into the system. So it is, we tried to get a third party to do the data inputs, but it really required so much information from the teacher that it didn't really work out as a time-saving thing that I was trying to put in place. It just made more work for all parties. And
So
headaches.
when do the teachers get to do this?
Extra.
It's extra.
We were talking about the extra that we ask of our teachers who don't get
So
paid.
they plan
As much as the neighbors,
individualized
you know.
lessons for a lot of students. They implement, execute those individualized lessons. They are taking, they've made the formats, because the taking the data straight in, some of the stuff is okay, but it's got to be a little more portable even than a laptop is in terms of getting that data. And sometimes it requires observational input and then parsing out, was this a learn unit? Did it, or did it not? Okay, so it requires making a permanent record of something that occurred, and then making a decision, did it meet or not, rather than just quick and easy, oh yes you did it, no you didn't.
Yeah.
So it's extra.
You sound like you need a well-qualified
Like
professional person.
end of the day or lunchtime? Like when do they really get to do it?
That's been the tripping point in getting that data in a format that you can use. So, like, when she's talking about all these learn units and stuff that they're doing, it's when the decision making was like, let's see what these things look like to make sure that we're making this decision. Now we do use, like she said, we use a lot of that when we go to Mr. Talbot and we say, look, we've been throwing a lot of energy into this system, and the kids' graph isn't moving. We suspect there's something more than just missing information or gaps, or the deficits are caused by something more, because we've done all of these changes in tactics. We've changed modalities to see if we can get the learning moving, and when it doesn't, that's usually when we call on him. It's like, hey, we suspect there's something more going on, because look at all the things that we've done, and we would expect this much growth, and we're not really getting that kind of growth. There probably is a processing issue.
I was listening. I can explain how
Come on.
focused it is.
Yes.
I always listen to it.
Okay, so she,
So
the case in point, we have had this discussion about how to get the data where the data needs to be that they are collecting. She's got reams of data.
So, for example, I'm middle school ELA, 2 grade levels, but I have 33 students. In my class alone, I have individualized bottle assignments at the instructional level for 33 kids that I do weekly. I have ReadWorks assigned at both grade level and instructional level for 33 kids, nonfiction and fiction, with read aloud or without, based on their accommodations that I have data on. I have GimKit, which is what I use for vocabulary, individualized to 33 kids as well, which is instructional level. And then in addition to that, there's my grade level work for 33 kids. So like that, I also have spelling individualized for 33 kids at the instructional level, which varies across kindergarten to 2nd grade currently. And I have fluency readings as well, individualized for 33 kids. No kid is on the same passage. So just that for the instructional level, not counting how much data I have on grade level, because I'm required by law to teach the grade level. And CABIS requires instructional level, so the merging of the two. So that's a lot in itself, but then in terms of upper and middle, Miss O, who's science, and Henry, who is social studies, they teach grades 4 through 8. So think of how much instructionalized
That's why I'm
on
wondering,
their
like,
side
when you
versus
have time to do
they
this.
have
And-
more grade banks.
And that's
it's
what I
across
meant with
all the
getting
subjects.
that data to you that's the difficulty in getting that data. I mean, I can hand you a
Because
stack.
I've
She's
shown
shown me a
she's
stack
like,
of
how
it.
are
I
you
can
doing-
hand you
are
a
you
stack.
putting your data
Good
in?
luck
I was
with
like,
that.
when can I put this stack other than
So it
what
just
is
grows
required?
exponentially.
Correct.
Of
And then
data
actively
generation.
making decisions. I have all these things. For me, I have everything in their own spreadsheet. Each kid, I have a fluency spreadsheet, a spelling, and I keep track. And as I'm testing, and I update it all in there. So I do have access to all of it. But to
Like
put it
going
into one,
across a whole class,
Yeah.
because she's got it both instructional as well as her grade level for each one of those kids.
So,
And
like,
so like when
Reverse
she's
has
testing
it.
spelling, it's not like she can read a list to all 15 kids and they all write down,
Right.
because every kid in her class has a different list, because we don't just move on when the kid fails
when the kid
and
masters.
everyone goes on to the next
Yeah.
list. Like, no, you don't go to the next list until you have mastered this list.
Mastery.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
so some kids move faster than others do. Others are missing a phonics piece before they can really get a grasp of some of these spelling lists, and then they're like moving.
There's on-the-spot instructional adaptation going on.
Correct.
At the same time.
Correct.
I mean, that's speaking from my side of it. Like, I know in Miss Delott's class, she has extra math, which is fluency individualized. She has iReady, which is individualized at instructional level, also at the grade level. And then she does her own station. She does vocabulary. She even implemented a spelling list of math terms, so that way on
They were
leak
getting
tests
the
and
math.
stuff, the students understand how to do a written response question for math tests using the math terminology, and they know how to spell the words. And this was all individualized as well. And I can only imagine, I mean, my list is extensive, but Maddie is more extensive than I am with how much is individualized.
Exactly.
Miss, as of right now, I think Miss K is the main teacher that can keep up with Learning Picture, but she's also in the master's program, and it's also a part of some of her projects and stuff. So she has to, like, she's part of her grade and success in the master's program comes from that Learning Picture being completed. So
Yeah.
there's a little bit extra.
And like I said, we tried to put Data Guy onto doing that data, but because there were so many questions involved, it's not like telling a finance guy just get a grunt to put in all the numbers that are always going to correspond to each other. It's a little different doing that kind of instructional data when it's individualized lessons for each one of the kids, and making that data meaningful the way you guys want it across a whole grade, because it's meaningful when we make decisions on
it's-
one kid.
The data is being collected. The decision, like the instructional and the grade level
But-
academics are being presented. We are doing the things. It's just how tedious it is to input.
Yeah.
I mean, at first she didn't realize, and I was like showing her like just the same explanation I gave y'all. I was like, here's this and this and this, and she was like,
And
oh, okay. And I'm like, I'm newly married. I don't have a family. I have 2 cats. I don't have like a family of kids. But like, how can someone who does? Like, I call Miss Delott's listening. She knows I call her. I call her Superwoman because she's got 6 kids. I don't know how she can do all the individualizing, all the planning, plus take care of her home life. How do you?
And y'all, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know that we need that. I don't know if that I would understand what I'm looking at when I see her data. As long as she has usable data for
her to
herself,
make decisions.
that I think that's. I
And
think
like,
what
I
we
have the
need-
data. Like, if it
and
needs to go to
the
Mr.
data-
Jason, we have what we need to put into graphs and send it.
The data that is needed currently on the alternate framework, or even on the tweaking that Mr. Talbot did, which I think would be the most useful changes
yeah.
in terms of the levels that we're allowed to have and have points in, because it literally is yes or no. I have to give a beginning of year score in math or ELA, I have to give an end of year score, and then I have to answer, did they make the sufficient growth, yes or no? That's the only thing that currently fits in that alternate framework, yes or no.
Right.
And the percentage of yeses, to be exact. And that's where those percentages that we plugged into Mr. Talbot's, or that I plugged into the previous one.
Yeah.
But we don't want a yes or a no. We want at an A level, a B level, a C level, a D level, and did.
Well, no,
Oh,
it
no,
would still
that's a
be yes or
separate
no
part.
as to the percentage of students, because that's
So
how
that
the
would go into
question
the
has.
percentages,
Yes.
like that.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
understand.
Yeah, to get those grades.
But
Yes,
Karen, you about to make a point, and I think it's the same point that I was gonna make about the type of data that we need.
Right.
You know, for an alternative framework.
Mhm.
You know, and this is gonna sound like a negative, and it's not meant to be, but believe me. You know, we live in a data-driven world. That's just a fact.
No, it's true.
And the people in Baton Rouge, they would not understand half of the things you just talked about.
No.
They wouldn't. But they do, if we present an alternative framework that's based on student growth, then we have to have numbers, data to back that up. Okay, so that's what we're looking for, and you know, I'll cover that a little bit in the next report. You know, but it's not going to change. You know, we empathize. I think as a board member, all of us, we empathize with the amount of work that you all have to do.
Absolutely.
But that's the reality of it. That's what we have to deal with on a macro level. You all deal with it on a micro level in the individual classrooms, individual schools. We deal with the entire school on a macro level.
So does it have to be the learning picture? Because the learning picture, even that in itself, it is individualized to every single student. Is
Not
it something
for us.
that
I
we
don't
can
think in this
derive?
context. I think what we need to focus on is like you guys continue to do exactly what you're doing to make those, I'm gonna call them on the fly decisions, you know, and then I guess what we really need then is the data to show what is the outcome
effect
of that for effectiveness, like by collecting and making those changes, you know, on those individual levels. What is the outcome of that on a global level, like on a school-wide level, which would be like your possible, like how it would show up in iReady or on iReady. How would it show up possibly on EasyCBM or Acadience, or, you know, possibly combinations of those. I think we all only need to pick one for ELA and one for math. But I guess what we're needing is how does that translate into an outcome for, you know, for at a systems level. And that's where it comes with the percentages of yeses.
Because, like I said, the learning picture, that document, it's not one document that represents the whole school. Every child has their own learning picture. So even that in itself, there isn't one graph that reflects the progress of Max. So if the state is looking for a certain thing, is there a way we could make our data that we're pulling match what the state needs?
Yeah.
And that would be the
Kind of
halfway.
like doing all of that, what is the, you know, how does that change those outcomes for the better?
And I think it's up to us to tell you what we need. And then you would go from there. We're talking about that, the board level. And remember, they're saying yes or no, you can go on or you don't go on. We would tell you based on your individual things that you're doing all the time, this is what we need. And I think that's getting clearer and clearer, where we could tell you,
Exactly what it is.
yeah,
Not
we need.
not unusual for me to maybe have a different take on this. I clarified with Boo, this is the end of our third year of college, is that right, or fourth year?
This is the fourth year.
Yeah.
Looking back, I'm listening to the level of sophistication that we've had to teachers come in here and talk about what they're doing with students and the type of data they're using to make decisions about instructional things. There's only a couple of places in the country, or maybe on the planet, that are doing what we're doing here, moving Cobus into an instructional, a whole school. That's a pretty rare thing. And I see a couple of different things that we need right now. One, the kind of global stuff that we need in terms of what we want to do something in terms of an evaluation structure. Kind of immediately, there's some pressure on that to resolve that. On the other hand, I don't think we should turn our eyes away from the type of information that you're presenting. And so it may be that it'll have to be a stepwise procedure, but I would like someone sitting on the BESI board or the whole BESI board or somebody sitting in leadership positions in the State Department to hear this very discussion about, look, these are our global data and we have these concerns. This is how we're addressing it, and then be able to shift down to the data and the structure that you're talking about how we're teaching kids, how we're modifying instruction for kids and trying to help them overcome a problem that they have with the way their brain functions, right? This is pretty sophisticated type of stuff that we're talking about here, particularly in an applied behavior analytic model. It's phenomenal what this is coming to. The level of sophistication of discussion that I'm hearing from now 4 years ago about what's going on with kids in our classroom is it's a totally different presentation. It's a totally different, it is very data driven. We've heard it's couched in solid applied behavior analytic literature, working with kids with disabilities. That's something that I think has to be part of our message and presentation to the world about what we're doing. I understand the logistic weirdness of how do we try to capture some of this stuff. It's not as easy as I thought it was going to be. I'm learning as we go.
I have to disagree with you, Steve. The conversation in front of BESI would be wonderful. I agree with that. Okay, because I think that would all some of them. But as far as what we are trying to develop to present to the superintendent, it's just three things. We already have a framework in place. The framework, lower school, middle school, upper school. If we can show them benchmark data and growth data for math and literacy or English or whatever we call it for those 3 grades, that's what we need to present to the superintendent to say, this is what we're presenting as an addendum to our alternative evaluation plan. That's what we need as a board to present. The conversation, great. Steve, I agree with you there. The conversation would be great. It would be an education for a lot of people on the BESI board, believe me. But as far as what we need to get an approval on an addendum, that's the type of stuff.
Cleveland, I think that's consistent with what I said. I said we're
Which
working on 2 things here. The first
benchmarks
thing
are things
is
we
what
can
you
pull that
just
data
described.
from very, very easily.
When I said that in a
I guess
stepwise
where I was
manner,
going
the
with
next
this was
phase
like-
is how do we capture what's being presented in an efficient way that I think eventually could be wrapped into an overall assessment of what we're doing as a school. I understand that there's a more immediate need that you're describing, and I wholeheartedly, I mean, you guys are doing that, and I think it's awesome. But I think we also need to hold on and recognize what we're seeing and what we're hearing, and how these are valuable data. To be able to track an individual's performance the way that we're doing and recognize that we're dealing with a dyslexic population, and some kids are going to hit that wall, and maybe we have to look at alternative adaptations for kids. The way we're going to figure those things out and what they need to be is exactly what we're doing right here, and that's what you can tell. I'm kind of worked up and excited about what we're doing now. That's what we're doing, and it's extraordinarily unique. It won't meet the need of what we need to talk to give the State Department right now, but it is something that I think we should aspire to as we move into the future.
And you see, that's what the board does. The board is making sure you have a job. And what we're saying is, you keep doing what you're doing. Don't stop what you're doing.
Please.
Let us figure out what these people need up here, and we'll tell you what we need to get from you to be able to survive.
You presented us, and Angela, both of y'all have presented us with a challenge of, okay, now we understand what the data generation really is. I got a clearer picture of that, and the how difficult it is time-wise to capture that in some form that can be looked at on a spreadsheet or tracked. That's a challenge for the school right now. That's what I'm.
Earlier, I did send what we had used last year. So the State Department sends us a template, right? And I have to put, using student ID numbers, not with names, anything identifiable, there before and after. I had sent that for both iReady, Math ELA, as well as for the Acadience /EasyCBM, okay, so that you could see what the template actually looks like, because it is for each student. And it's not like I'm putting just the percents. In fact, I don't send percents. I have to send them the raw data when I send it per student. The students who we started with and ended with have to be on that spreadsheet template. So was it useful to see the raw data that I had sent?
That's what we looked at on the top.
I think for what Mr. Jake talked to the superintendent about and what we're asking for, I think the raw data will be useful, yes.
Yes.
Because also the learning picture does not account for the benchmarks. That's the stuff we are doing instruction wise.
Right.
And even to add another layer to how tedious it is, it's broken down every standard we teach, every objective into every learn unit. So on top of the individualization, we have to keep track of every type of learn unit we present per objective, per Common Core standard. So it adds another layer of just how
So it's going to create
how
such a rich
tedious.
database.
It's like you said, it's a very exponential possibilities, because if you are truly doing the things that CABIS requires, which is that instructional level, that individualized level, it will add up very quickly based on how much is going on in the class and how many students you have.
Well, Mr. Howell explained something earlier today, and I think this is the picture that we're trying to get over to everybody. You know, if you ever sat in that chamber, in Baton Rouge, when they're deciding whether a charter school should be renewed or not, you had people come in there with testimonials talking about how great the school was for their children, how much it helped them, tears coming out of their eyes, and all this, they are going to look at as this. You know, they're going to ignore the tears, they're going to ignore the testimonials, they're going to say approve or not approve. And that's it. It's a cold-hearted thing now that they do. As educators, we don't like it and we don't understand it, but that is
The reality.
the reality of what
Yeah.
we live here now.
I mean, in terms of just leap testing, I had the discussion with the students today. We were practicing open-ended questions, and I was like, guys, I might know you and how you respond, and this response you're giving me may totally track. Like, they were joking around. They said, we were doing cause and effect, and it said, somebody surprises you. What is the effect? And one of the kids was like, I'd punch him in the face. I said, I know you. I know you completely. You don't like surprises. For me, that's acceptable. But when you do the state test, somebody just has a number in front of them in your paper. Does that sound like an acceptable response? No. I said, so what would be a more acceptable response? I was surprised. I was happy that I got to see my friend that I hadn't seen in so long. So, like, getting them to just shift that thought process of, it's not me grading your tests. It's not me grading your assignments, where certain things I can completely be like, yup, that they are answering honestly, because trust me, our kids can be honest about a lot of things, and getting them to understand that when LEAP comes around, they don't know anything about your background, they don't know your name, they are given a number in your test, and they're said, here, grade this. What's appropriate,
and I
what's
guess
not.
Similarly, that's what Desi's doing too.
And yeah.
You know,
Like, they
know what
just,
your name is.
here's your data, here's the
Scan your
school,
pass.
this
Yeah.
is what it is.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for all that.
Yeah, thank you.
And I feel like I opened up a can of worms. I don't know how this happened, but I just think we need to be careful about what we ask of them to do to provide for us, because it might be stuff we don't really need. I don't want to overburden them with stuff
it sounds
that they
that's
already
quite
have
possible.
going on,
Yeah.
and so when we say we want the data for the framework, that's this,
Oh, yeah.
this,
absolutely.
you know,
Very
it's,
You should be able
I
to say, oh, yeah, I
appreciate-
can do that.
Yeah.
That's all
When-
you want.
Whenever y'all said like what it is with the
We're
benchmarks,
not-
absolutely,
yeah,
we
we're
can
not asking
easily.
There's actually
Like, and it's
readily
not
available.
discrediting the the learning picture would be very, very,
We
very
got something
valuable information,
No.
but it is something that is more
It's too much for this.
It's not a-
specifically
it's not a-
CABIS.
It's
It is not
valuable
a
for you.
LDOB specific
yeah,
thing.
is valuable for you.
And that's
not-
honestly coming from just the discussions that we've had as teachers. And I know I told Ms. Rodrigue when she first asked me about the learning picture, I said, at the end of the day, when it comes to my time, Department of Ed's not looking at the learning picture. I have my data, I'm making my decisions, but Department of Ed's not pulling
Right.
the learning picture, they're pulling the benchmarks. I need my kid to perform on this.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna
I
do
would
my
almost
data and do
educate
those
them.
things. not that I don't want to. It's just at the end of the
Yeah.
day, like I said, the amount of time we have, and Ms. Dela and I say sometimes it feels like we're trying to please two gods. We have Cavas and LDOE. There is a way to marry it. It's just we're still trying to figure out the
Yeah.
balance.
Cavas won't
And-
keep us alive, but LDOE will. But if Cavas gets
Cavas
us
can
to
help
the-
us stay
right,
alive, but
exactly.
LDOE is the one making the decision,
And
and
remember,
that's
we chose Cavas, but we need results. Even though we love Cavas, you better get some results.
Yeah.
and
And
we
they
do see
are.
we
They are.
do see
Yeah.
results.
That's
So
all
it's
it
showing
is.
that
Yeah.
the things
That's
we're doing
all-
are
that's all
working.
it
It's
is.
just it is a very tedious
Yeah.
process.
And if I could just tie that to the comment I made about what our teachers do
Oh,
above and beyond
Yeah.
for less than our neighbors. So,
Yeah.
yeah. I wish not, but
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
Trust me, my husband's like, you drive 50 minutes every day. You can go somewhere else, and I'm like, this is how I want to teach, though. I can't just up and leave Max. This is how I want to teach. We just bought this house last year. Like, this is how teaching should be. This is what I want to do. I can't just up and leave. But it's more of just thinking of financially,
Okay,
like where we are.
All right, one more
All right,
thing.
yeah, we appreciate that.
One day, if you ever decide to leave, if you have taught the new ones how to be you, you can go on to other things. And that's what we're trying to keep going to.
You're like, don't do it.
Everybody,
Right.
a life is a long time.
You didn't
Another
have to
point-
go there.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, let's,
Oh, yeah.
At least you said if.
how about, thank you again. No
I've
problem.
been here 3 years. got
Thank you.
35.
So, y'all, we don't have, do we have a parent meeting up here?
No, not
No
today.
representative, no report. Okay, how about new board business?
Okay.
Next board meeting, Thursday, April 17th. Notice that's earlier, not the last Thursday.
Yeah.
PTA, she said last one is May 14th. Leave testing, Easter break, opera, awards day, all of it, that was covered. And one last update on the accountability, which this was kind of part of it.
Because that usually takes a long time,
Yeah.
but we discussed it.
I think a lot of it was just
It won't
discussed.
take long today, I promise you.
Yeah.
Because we did meet today, we met from 2 to about 3:20, and, you know, all I can say now is I wish we had had this before we met today,
Right.
because that would have given us, you know, some resources. But we do need more data, and, similar to this, Ms. Rodriguez, at some point, we're gonna have to meet with you, we'll talk to you about getting the time. Lead test is going on now, so I know this is not an optimum time, but, if we can meet with you, I think that we have the correct resources in place now for us to go ahead and put a plan, together. And just overall, we all need to keep in mind that we need positive growth data wherever we can. And we know it's not gonna be 100% across the board. We know that a lot of kids that have experienced growth are not gonna pass the LEAP test. But if we can get the state of Louisiana to accept an addendum to our alternative plan showing, giving us credit for growth that students make, then I think that is going to help us in the long run.
Absolutely.
That's all, that's it.
And that's all we're looking for.
I think part of
And
that to be
so
to
also
absolutely clarify
the stuff
and
that you
remind
gave
the
us,
population of kids that we're really.
So one of them had the CTOP.
There was some discussion around that about
I did-
comparing ourselves to other
Again,
schools.
I
and service.
received the template, I filled the template, ignore that one, I cleaned it up on a second one.
Okay.
It's the same data, but I didn't change the tabs of
Gotcha.
what they gave me. I put my data in and then
Okay,
I sent
I
you
got
another
you.
one with a new
That
tab.
makes
Yeah,
sense
that
now.
makes not, yeah.
So one of them is iReady, math and ELA. The
And the
other
other
one
one's
is
Acadience.
literacy with Acadience and math with Easy CBN.
Yep, I see it now. I got you.
And do we know what their criteria or criterion is with what is considered adequate growth?
Are we adjourning?